Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. I'm reviewing a special book today from the Child Poverty Action Group. It's their main book. It's probably the most important of every publication they produce because it's the one most people know them for. It's called Welfare Benefits and Tax Credits Handbook, and it's for the 2017-2018 year. It's now in its 19th edition, and it's been written by a team of people from the CPAG. The review that Elizabeth and I have given this is as clear and crisp a statement as you can get, with the new CPAG Benefits and Credits Handbook for 2017-18. That's what you're getting here. It's a big book, it's expanding, and it's quite expensive now. £61. It's quite expensive, but it should be available and you should be able to see it in a number of places. Reference libraries, there's the spine, and of course your Citizens Advice Bureaus. There is the back. You probably can't see too much of what's on the back cover, but you've got some idea of the basic information. You can see there are some shaded zones to assist you trying to find things. If I open the book up, it's now running to 1,760 pages. The index, which is at the back, is by page numbering, and the pages are quite flimsy, so do be a bit careful with them. The index is actually a very substantial index, and just getting to it, there are a lot of appendices. But let me just show you where the index is and where it starts. And it says this is how to use the index, so do familiarise yourself. That's why I'm showing the book, how to actually use the index, because there's there is quite a lot of abbreviation even there in the index in case you're having a problem, because this is a technical and complicated area. There are 14 appendices. You can see them listed, and you can see the shaded areas that we've got there. Going to the front of the book, there's the main front page, and then after that you've got some detail. As I say, the pages are quite thin. There's the detail about the book with the ISBN. These are all the people, I can't go through their names, these are the people who have actually written this book. A very large number of people have been involved, and there is an important foreword. There are acknowledgements excuse me, about the book and when the law is stated as at the 6th of March, where possible. The foreword is very important. It's been written by the Chief Executive of the Child Poverty Action Group, Alison Garnham, and she makes some very important points which I shall refer to in my review. Then you've got the contents section, a very detailed section of contents, and then if I move on from that to the various chapters, just before I do that, those are the appendices, the 14 appendices. Then after that you've got a short statement on abbreviations. Then you've got the means test rates, which are always very directly relevant. They are current as I speak in the summer of 2017, and then after that you get the actual rates themselves. Then the non-means tested benefit rates, which are there, and then you've got after that the tax credit rates themselves. Then you've got the introduction. The tax credit rates are important because it covers child tax credit, working tax credit, and thresholds. That's the income threshold and so forth. Then you get into the various parts. Part 1 is the introduction, how to use this book. Said it before because I've reviewed this before in many of the other CPAG books. It's always useful to know how to use these books because they are handbooks, and this is a complicated area, so it's important to just read that and get an idea of what you're looking for, the various steps that are being set out. Then you've got, with each chapter, you've got key facts and effectively a form of introduction to the chapter, so you should be able to find things quite easily, because this, as I say, is a complex area, and it starts off with the introduction of universal credit. And I've reviewed the universal credit book, which CPAG have produced recently, their book. Universal Credit Housing Costs, chapter 22. You see the book runs through. It's got a lot of chapters, 55, 66 and so on, before we get to the final part. I don't know how many chapters in total, but I think it's 67 chapters, I think. Let's have a look. Yeah, no, 68 chapters. then you do have the first appendix, useful addresses. Now, without showing any more of the book, there it is. Nearly 1,800 pages of it. It's a heavy book. Do be careful with the pages, because the pages are quite thin, and so they're easy to tear, actually, which you've got to be careful of. Of course, it's a paperback, so when it's used a lot, it does tend to fall apart a bit. But this is an annual publication, and one that I think is absolutely fundamental. Now, what do we say about the book? Because it's my pleasure always to review any work from the Child Poverty Action Group, because of the work they do as a charity. I'm a very strong supporter of theirs. It explains in the book what they do. But this is important, this one, because it's the 19th edition of their annual work, and it's a seminal work on welfare benefits and tax credits. And it's 20 experts who've contributed to the book. So you're getting information from a very wide amount of expertise. And I suggest you start by reading the foreword from Alison. She writes that whilst universal credit may be coming, and certainly it's coming in, it's clear that it's hamstrung by severe funding, policy design and practical problems, as anything, unfortunately, in this area will face, because there's been a serious attempt, and I'm not making any party political comments about this whatsoever. There have been some serious attempts to try to sort out what was a really complicated mess, and I make no bones about the fact that it's disgraceful that this sort of mess has been allowed to continue for so long, and it's time the government got a grip and started actually making sure that these allowances are understood by everybody. That's really why we're trying to go at it from a different direction. Now, having said all of that, there are, as Alison says, a lot of problems, and money, of course, is the bottom line on all of it. What she goes on to say, though, in her foreword, is that its revolutionary promises have long faded. Again, rather sad to have to report that. Of course, the problems go deeper, because we face what she describes as the very real prospect of a large, single and flawed means test bearing down on working age families. Now, that's clearly a very big problem, which most people who advise, whether they are actually within the benefits field, whether they're lawyers or whether they're politicians dealing with a constituency case, they know that they are going to have some difficulties, and this is especially acute, frankly, in inner city areas and in effectively Labour seats, if I want to put it into parliamentary terms. And so it's important to know what's available and how to help people. So ominously, what in fact Alison goes on to say is she concludes that we're running out of time to avert a crash landing. So thankfully, in my view, we've got these publications as the best way through the current benefits mire. And I'm hoping that one of these days we'll start having a much more simplified system. I do see, with the advent of huge increases in the use of online and artificial intelligence, that there are going to be a lot of changes taking place in the future, but there are going to be an awful lot of problems as well. And that's inevitable with any new systems that are coming in, and with an expanding population as well, and a larger number of people who have entitlement. Now, the book remains the best-selling handbook from CPAG. It's known as the Advisor's Bible, and it continues to review all the recent changes to welfare benefits and those that are in progress for us as the users of the system. It also highlights tactical information on common problem areas and how to challenge decisions, which one may find, actually looking at this book, one of the most useful aspects of the new edition, and of course of the series. And I think you should challenge if you don't agree with what is actually being said. That I do find in my own practice that there's far too much grumbling and much less actual complaining and challenging of some of the most absurd decisions that are sometimes made. And it's really because the people we're dealing with are very vulnerable, and they're not in a position to get tough. Obviously people like me can get tough to a certain extent, but it's very difficult when you're dealing with a bureaucracy and the orders are orders concept is very much to the fore. So you've got to be aware of all of that. But these books, of course, are great help to us. The new edition, of course, for 2017-18 offers the latest information on universal credit, on personal independence payment, the bedroom tax and benefit cap. You heard about the bedroom tax. We've had all sorts of problems. We have got a neutered government, a minority government effectively with DUP support. How long that will last, I don't know. What's going to happen, we have no idea, because at the moment Brexit is dominating the parliamentary process. But we've got concepts like the bedroom tax still around. How long they're going to last, I don't know. But at least we've got something here which will give you an idea of where we are at the present time. The editors have attempted, and I think been successful in updating information on the new claimant responsibilities and sanctions regime as well, and I thank them for that. Fortunately, it remains the annual handbook which provides the most comprehensive coverage available to all social security benefits and tax credits. It's fully indexed, as I've indicated by showing you. It's a detailed index at the back and cross-referencing throughout to the relevant legislation in over 1,700 pages. And you do have in the front of the chapters some help in trying to identify where to find what you're looking for, because this is really a difficult subject. It's a little bit like looking at some of the company law stuff, only this is even more complex than some of the corporate governance matters that I deal with, where there's a very different approach. Now, the jurisdiction for this handbook covers England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and its users include welfare rights advisors, lawyers, social workers, housing and benefits staff in local authorities, health visitors, union officials and claimants. So there's something for everyone. And the book should be relatively readily available. You should find it in the CABs as part of their standard information package, because benefit rates and regulations are changed every April. That's with the budget, which means that anyone needing reliable and up-to-date guidance will need to replace their old edition with a fully revised April 2017 edition. This is the current one. Now, having said that, when this review was being written, we had just gone through a snap, as it was called, but rather prolonged general election campaign, which led to this neutered government. Now, I do not know at this stage of presenting this where we are with the budget, because it's clear to me we're going to have probably some changes, and it may well come in some sort of autumn budget, or we could have an emergency budget of some sort, but depending very much on the Brexit negotiations and what happens, because the government will have to find, although I don't see why it should, personally, I know I'm not a Brexit man, but I don't see why we should be paying to leave Europe, but we apparently have to. It may well be that between now and March 2019, when we leave, they're going to have to find some money. They certainly found enough to give to the DUP, and they found enough for certain other matters. So it may well be that we're going to have some sort of emergency budget at some stage. We're certainly going to have further statements from the Treasury. So do bear that in mind when you think of what is available at the moment with regard to credits, because as far as we know, it's the only book, this one, that's published at the same time as the new benefit rates and regulations come into force. That was before we had the general election in June 2017, and it therefore should give you, this book should give you 12 months of usage. Let me put it this way, that's the assumption. Now, the final word, I think, should come from Alison, who reminds us that CPAG's urgent role continues to be the work with advisors around the country, with the CABs and in the advice centres and in local government and in the voluntary sector. They cover all of those areas, and the aim, as always, is to secure improvements to protect families as much as we can, and they do just that. And it's a very important role, which is why I do always do these reviews where I can and get them as widely publicised as possible. It's just because the book is actually indispensable. It's the welfare rights movement, which too is why the book should always have pride of place on our bookshelf, because it's books like this that they make our lives a lot easier, and otherwise I really do think we would be struggling. I'm sure politicians, when you have the constituents coming to see you, we have the same problems because quite frankly it's very difficult sometimes to know how to advise them. Now the law is covered as at the 6th of March 2017, and it includes the regulations laid up to that time. As I've said, we may well be having some changes, but I'm hoping that this will be substantial probably until 2018. I would think so anyway. There's the front, spine, and then you've got the back again. And then just opening it in the middle, you can see Chapter 40, Benefits for Students. Very relevant. Just as the students start going back to university, you can see a lot of information here. Part-time students and so forth. Full-time students are covered. Employments and support allowances and so forth. So there is information, I think, for everybody who has a query about welfare benefits and tax credits. And I'm going to repeat it, but just say, Alison, thank you. Thank you to the 20 people who've put this book together. I've said we can't do without this sort of work. It's reasonably priced too, because the other stuff, the bigger legal stuff, is really complex. And my biggest concern has always been that I just wonder, because this is such a complex setup, I just wonder how much the civil servants actually understand about how this system works, because frankly I think it's a system that most people won't understand at all, and I don't think many people do. And the plea is, please make it simpler. In the meantime, this is the best help I can suggest, so thank you. Bye bye.